Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 27, in which I interview Soror Kleito, also known as Isabela Shahira. But first, rather than reciting words out of the tech dictionary, I thought it would be nice to run through the 57 Perceptics. You've heard of the 5 senses? Check out the 57 Perceptics. See if you can grok this. Time, sight, taste, color, depth, solidity, barriers, relative sizes, external, sound, pitch, tone, volume, rhythm, smell, touch, pressure, friction, heat or cold and oiliness, personal emotion, endocrine states, awareness of awareness, personal size, organic sensation, including hunger, heartbeat, blood circulation, cellular and bacterial position, gravitic, self and other weights, motion of self, motion exterior, body position, joint position, internal temperature, external temperature, balance, muscular tension, saline content of self, body, fields, magnetic, time track motion, physical energy, personal weariness, etc., self-determinism, moisture, self, sound direction, emotional state of other organs, personal position on the tone scale, affinity, self and others, communication, self and others, reality, self and others, emotional state of groups, compass direction, level of consciousness, pain, perception of conclusions, past and present, perception of computation, past and present, perception of imagination, past and present, perception of having perceived, past and present, awareness of not knowing, awareness of importance, unimportance, awareness of others, awareness of location and placement, perception of appetite, kinesthesia, the life and legacy of Frater X from the OTO over here on Orange Grove in Pasadena. He was initiated by one of the founders of Jet Propulsion Laboratory. You should look into it. Sex and Rockets, Amazon. Our guest tonight is an old friend of mine. We used to drive around talking about Atlantis and talking a lot. Good times. You may have seen her in Beyond Lemuria, one of Pope Runyon's movies. So let's get to the interview, shall we? Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast, Soror.
Thank you, Edward.
I just finally saw Beyond Lemuria.
It came out a long time ago. We filmed it on 2006, and I think it got edited and uploaded to Amazon in 2007. I saw it on Netflix
Really?
a couple years ago, yeah, so it might still be there.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, that's good. Well, excellent work.
Thank you.
Both the you played both light and darkness, like everybody.
Yeah, I think there's actually 3 characters that I represented in that film.
You were an extra sitting behind William Morgan when Poke Runyon was giving the speech as Leslie, the professor, and then...
Yes, I was, I think it's actually 4 characters. It's the background role, which you spoke about, and then I was the girl dancing in front of William Morgan, and then I was the priestess for Soror Lily, or for Lily.
Yeah.
And then I was a Darrow princess at the end, so that's 4 roles.
They mentioned the Brotherhood of the One in the movie. I remember you talking about that when we used to hang out back in the old days.
Oh, the One. I actually don't remember that. I think, let's see, I think it's the Brotherhood of the Draconian Brotherhood. Is that what you mean?
Well, there was the Brotherhood of the Sons of Baal and the Brotherhood of the One.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But that wasn't Lemuria, that was Atlantis.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. That's when I was studying all the Atlantean stuff, and then was the Children of the Light of One and the Sons of Belial. The Children of the Law of One, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and it was... they were in charge of keeping the flame, or whatever the story version of the story was, the crystal or something, and then the other brotherhood took over and misused it, and that caused the disaster.
Well, I think what it would be kind of like the Children of the Law of One were more interested in transmitting consciousness through quartz crystal and through stones and through meditation, and the Sons of Belial were more interested in technology and into brainwashing.
Right.
And supposedly it was the Sons of Belial that brought us all technology here to Earth, and it was the Children of the Law One that brought us yoga and consciousness and meditation. Yeah.
Wow. So you have been a priestess in a few different contexts. I was wondering, I'm not sure how many of those you want to comment on. So would you care to volunteer any of that information?
Sure, I can volunteer some of it. Let's see. I remember when I first met you, if I recall right, it was 2002 when I went to the Temple of Isis, and I got... that was my first initiation, actually. And after that, I ended out with Paul Clark.
Oh, lvx.org.
Yeah, that's
the Fraternity of Hidden Light.
So I ended out with Paul Clark in the Fraternity of Hidden Light. And then, I spent like a few sessions with him and his group. And then he said, you know what? I know someone who would love to meet you. His name is Poke Runyon, and he invited us and our group to one of his seasonals, and I've decided to bring you along with the rest of the group. So we all went to the seasonal, and I decided to come again outside of the group to the seasonals. Mm-hmm. And then I went to one more seasonal, and then Poke asked me to be in the role of Astarte in the Seven Gates seasonal. So I had to prepare for that role, and he said, but before you do the role, you should take a first degree, And so I took the first degree, and I prepared myself for the role, and it was extremely difficult role. I had to read all of the material, and I had to rehearse, and I had to come up with the costume, and I had to rehearse speech and body movements. I had never really done acting of that sort. Most of the acting that I had done was of hero and like bombshell, but this was different. This was an acting. This was a ritual, and it was really difficult, and I finally did it. And then the next seasonal after that, he asked me to be a priestess, and so then I had to prepare myself furthermore to be a priestess and to understand also more of the material and go deeper. And so I've been a priestess in not all the seasonals, just whenever it's necessary. I've been a priestess for Pope Runyon and in the Church of the Hermetic Sciences for 10 years since 2005.
Nice.
Then I became a novice priestess in Ordo Templi Orientis in 2007, but I'm currently not active. I live kind of far, and it's difficult for me to make it to a lot of the meetings, and I'm not active because of that. Let's see, being a novice priestess for the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, it was a role in which I had to separate myself from it. I had to separate myself from who I was in entertainment, the sexual personality that I had in entertainment. I had to separate myself from that and reinvent myself, recreate myself as another entity. And it was actually a very difficult time because I had to develop my higher consciousness in sexuality, and nothing that I possessed in acting or in the erotic world of entertainment actually could prepare me for this role. This was a total separation, a reinvention of myself, but of my higher consciousness, and I had to think about all kinds of things. I had to think about the implements, the chalices, the meaning of the chalices, the grail, the host, the cake of light, the paten, the costumes that I would wear, the colors that I would use, what they meant and how they would manifest in the ritual, and my speech, my intonation, who I wanted to represent as priestess, what character of the priestess I wanted to represent. Did I wanted to represent seductive priestess, or did I like a harlot, or did I wanted to represent more of some other type of formularium into being a priestess? And I had to. It was quite honestly a total different entity than anything that I had in my erotic career and in acting. And if you've seen me perform, and if you're part of the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, and if you see me perform, you'll know that it's another identity, it's another entity. You'll feel the presence in the room, that there's somebody else there. That it's not, if you see me in the films that I've done, if you see me in my work in eroticism, and if you go and see me perform in the ritual, you'll know that there's another consciousness there. You'll be able to tell the difference. This is not the same girl.
Yeah.
And this is very difficult for a lot of people to realize that I'm somebody else. They think it's acting. They think it's just like another role, and they don't realize that it's actually an entity. And a lot of people don't really have any respect until they see the actual ritual. It's a quickly way to shut up a lot of people that are very disrespectful. I keep that portion of my life pretty separate to mostly to members of the church. They've been with me for a long time, and I actually don't open that part of my identity, that consciousness. I'm not really open to it unless you're part of the church.
Right.
You're gonna know me as somebody completely different unless you have been participating in the rituals with me for at least a few years.
So when you're working as Astarte, I mean, is it correct to say that, or are you, when you are the priestess working with Astarte, do you embody Astarte?
No, actually, in the Church of the Hermetic Sciences, the title for the priestess is field, and she's not Astarte.
Okay.
They separate the goddess from the priestess. The priestess title is field, and then the goddess is Astarte, or sometimes is Tanit. And there are different roles. I usually alternate either the goddess, which is Astarte, or Tanit, or the priestess role. So it just depends on what I'm needed for during the seasonal.
So the role in the Ecclesia Gnostica you're connecting with, is it the Scarlet Woman?
Would I represent myself more as Nuit.
Okay.
And there's a lot of the way that she's like the Scarlet Woman there. But my representation is more like Egyptian, so
Yeah.
you would have to be there to see it.
Interesting. I'm just I find it interesting the idea of working with the ancient Semitic goddess on the seasonal work, and then also having worked with the Egyptian together. It's just sort of an interest. Have you embodied any other goddesses in your work, or gods? I've seen you invoke Ra.
Well, I've done the Rite of Venus, and I've been in the role of Venus in the Rite of Venus. So I've worked with Astarte. I've worked with Tanit, which is quite different from Astarte. I've worked with Anath. I've worked with Venus. I've worked a lot with Ishtar. And with Inanna. Let's see, I've worked with Nuit. I've worked with Isis. I've worked with like a lot of them, but as a priestess in front of a group of people and in ritual, I believe I've only worked with like 4 or 5, which is Nuit, Astarte, Tanit, and Ma'at. But what I go through in the role of Astarte and what I go through in the role of Nuit, it's actually more like, I wouldn't say it's aspecting or a possession. I would say it's like a consciousness that descends. I really don't know how it happens, but it's more of a consciousness. It's a higher consciousness. It's not something in the realm of demonic. It's more.
Right.
It is more of a consciousness in a group setting. I'm not the only one responsible for it. The whole group, with with the recitation of the anthem and all these things help with this consciousness, but it's definitely a higher consciousness.
Were you always interested in esoterica, or did that develop at a certain age?
When I was really young, when I was about 16 years old, I borrowed from the library The Tree of Life by Israel Regardie, and I read it, and I began practicing a lot of the exercises. At that time, the book wasn't edited by, by Pat Salewski, I think, is the one that did the editing just recently. So it was just basically just his own material, and I did all the exercises, sort of astral projection and the tattvas and the concentration. And he mentioned a little bit of Aleister Crowley at the end of the book, and I always kept in mind that I should look out for him, but I never got to him. I was so busy with the information from that book that I never got to him, and he oriented me in the book more towards Kabbalah, more than Aleister Crowley. So from that time on, I kept my eye out for Jewish temples where there would be the teaching of the Kabbalah. And let's see, I didn't touch anything for a long time. When I was about 19 years old, I read all the books of the teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda, and I oriented myself more towards shamanism. And then, so let's see what else. Let's see, around 21 years old, I started to read like a lot about fairies and dragons, and that wasn't a good place for me to go. I got caught in many dimensions and planes that I couldn't get out. But I think the most successful of my experiences was with the Tree of Life, and I didn't advance in all of the initiations because I really found it very difficult, actually, to go through everything. So going to the Hermetic tradition of the Church of the Hermetic Sciences and the Thelemic tradition of the OTO was actually easier for me to understand than a lot of the information coming from the Golden Dawn. It was of a different nature. I consider the Golden Dawn the toughest school of training in the Hermetic community. I considered it hard to the core, and I couldn't do it. It's just tough, you know.
You prefer one of the Protestant versions.
So I just...
or two of them.
Yeah, so I just... I actually did really well with a lot of the teachings of Aleister Crowley on light and on... pretty much on light and on the Egyptian god Ra, on his interpretation. I found it very, very uplifting, and it resonated with me well. I actually absorbed it in a higher magical plane. But I think the most of my success comes from the Church of the Hermetic Sciences, quite honestly.
Yeah, I finally got to interview Poke Runyon a week ago or so.
Yeah, he's quite a guy.
Yeah, indeed. It's nice. It was a long time coming because I just had sort of... I think I wasn't meant to talk to him until a certain point. Like, we were supposed to be separate, and then now it's like, oh, okay, now I feel like it's my long-lost brother that... Why haven't I been talking to you this whole time?
That happens with, like, a lot of people. Like, you feel that you don't resonate with them magically, that they're doing something wrong, or you're doing something wrong, and it doesn't come together until much later.
I had to grow up first.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you want to talk about, esoteric-wise or even otherwise?
Well, I just would like to say that actually most of my area of research, it concerns on on Soma, on the Haoma, and on the cult of Mithras. And I realized that I'm a girl, but that area is really fascinating for me. I just basically studied all the books of the mysteries of Mithras and on the fermented drink that they used to drink, whether it was a hallucinogenic drink or it wasn't, whether it was some potent drink of cherries, and that the actual qualities of the cherries itself made it primal for astral projection, because the center of the cult was to be inside a Mithraeum, and there used to be benches for reclining, and this is different. They didn't sit in lotus position for the reclination of astral projection. They just reclined, and they drank this drink that nobody knows what it is. It was either fermented or alcoholic or hallucinogen or an entheogenic drink. And they astral projected through the 7 planets. They entered and they exited. And so that was really fascinating to me, that there might have been some sort of hidden knowledge on astral projection that might not be depending on an entheogenic drink or on a psychotropic. And that we're just missing that, and we're just doing all these drugs, and instead of developing ourselves more,
Yeah. So you had said even though you're female, was that men only?
Well, the cult of Mithras, the mysteries of Mithras, is mostly associated for men. There's some talk that there were some women involved. They have found some tombs where there are some dedications by some very powerful women in Rome to Mithras. But other than that, it's mostly considered to be a cult for men. But, there was a dedication from an actor to Mithras. And right around the time that I became actor is when I started to study the cult of Mithras. So I don't consider myself like the powerful Roman women who gave the dedications. I consider myself more like the actor that dedicated himself to Mithras.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Soror, for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight. Thank you to Henry Wolfe and Nancy Hennings for providing the soundtrack to the 57 Perceptics. You can find those in 08. As a reminder, you might want to steer clear of that organization. Thank you to the monks at Mount Koyasan. Thank you to Camille and Kennerly. And of course, thank you. Hope you're having a good commute or wherever you are right now. I'll talk to you soon. Good night.